Hi everybody, and very welcome to yet another episode of Captains Speaking. My name is Petter Hörnfeldt, as always, and together with me I have...
Ben Watts.
Great to see you again, Ben. How has your week been so far?
Yeah, it's good. It's good to be back. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, how about you? How's your week been?
I'm a little bit confused. I'm just back in the office because I'm taking a break from my vacation. So normally during the summers, I try to go to Sweden for a month.
Nice.
Because I just, if it's less than that, first of all, it takes almost 24 hours for me to get up to our summer house.
Right.
And if it's less than a month, you just feel like you're stressed about all the things that you want to do. But with a month, you kind of get enough time to really relax, meet the people you want to meet, and just kick back in the sofa a little bit and watch the birds fly, really.
Yeah.
So that's what I tend to do. But what I've done a little bit differently this time around is that I have been there for 2 weeks, and then I have traveled back together with my youngest son, who wanted to go back to his friends for a while. And I'm taking a week here in the office, producing more Mentor Pilot content. And then I'm going to continue with another 2 weeks in Sweden. So my wife, Sandra, is still there together with my oldest son. And I'm kind of back here. But I thought that it would be just like flipping a switch. Like going on vacation, then working, and then going back on vacation. Turns out that switch is pretty sticky. I was working yesterday on a script to Mentor Pilot. I'm going to be filming that today. But the thing here, which has been amazing, is that for the first time ever in the 10 years that I've been running Mentor Pilot and Mentor Now, we have been able to continue with the same and even higher output on the channels than what we do normally during the month of July. Because if I go back, what I've just done is I've just said, no, we're just going to have vacation now. We're going to reduce the amount of videos going out. And that's just the way it is, because everyone needs vacation, and I don't have the team to do this. I cannot replicate myself. But now I have been able to replicate myself because I have you, Ben.
There you go.
Yay! So for the first time ever, I've been able to scale the team up to a size where I have been able to pre-record videos for Mentor Pilot before I went, and Mentor Now. You have been taking up a lot of slack, which is why we're going to see you on Mentor Now for most of August.
Yeah.
But I just want to take this time right now. I have sent out a message to my Patreons, telling them that they have enabled this. But I just want to do a shout out to every one of my patrons that are listening to this, that they are the ones that have enabled me to do this, right? I have teamed up with a company called Electrify that is helping me to do the actual scaling of the channels. I couldn't do that myself, finding the people and so on. So they are helping me to actually do the finding the right people to scale up. But when it comes to actually paying for that, it's my sponsors and it's Patreon and it's AdSense that is paying for that. And this is the first time ever I've been able to take proper vacation without reducing the output on the channel. So I am super, super happy.
Yeah, that's a step in the right direction. And it's great for me because, I've been gradually integrating into Mentor Now, which has been amazing. And like flying, it's a new skill. Learning to present is a new skill, and following your footsteps is hard, as we all know. So for me, I want that continuity. I need that continuity to practice. So having a number of videos in quick succession where I can get the script, edit the script, shoot it, edit it, and get it out there, learn from mistakes, little things, little changes. Doing that for me, I found has helped, and it's good for me.
There's no question. I mean, both you and I have been doing command training, right? And we know that without stepping back, the potential commander will never be able to learn.
No.
So it has been super hard for me to let go of the reins and okay, so you are now doing this. But I also know from experience that it's the only way to do it. And not only that, I mean, the audience needs to see you. I mean, we've already established on previous episodes that we are basically twins when it comes to our experience, right? Yeah. So I know that you have the same knowledge probably better. And you also have the same compassion and the same passion for sharing your knowledge that I do. But it takes a while for the audience to get used to seeing a new person in the screen. And I'm hoping that this month coming up now, where you are doing Mentor now almost exclusively, is going to help with that.
Yeah, I hope so. So I think there's hopefully multiple benefits. We get a refreshed Petter, we get a well-practiced me, and my face is out there more when people get used to it.
Yeah. No, it is super important to get this vacation going, because I can feel myself when I'm lying there in my hammock looking out over Bilsjösjön in Örnsköldsvik. New ideas starts popping up. Okay, it's like, ooh, what if we did this? What if we start doing live streams on Mentor Pilot, and we start answering people's questions, you and I together, about the previous episode? What if we do this? And that only comes up when you can distance yourself a little bit.
Yeah,
And see what can be improved.
Yeah, absolutely. And it leads us on nicely, actually. The last episode that we put out was how we both got into flying.
Yeah.
And that was a great episode to shoot, because it was kind of seeing, again, a lot of similarities between your path and my path, and kind of how raw that was. But a lot of great comments in there. One of them was how you and I first met. Because we've been doing stuff together now for a long time, hasn't it? And it, do anything. For me, I know it was a while ago, a long time ago. But I thought, yeah, when did we first met? I mean, I remember the first time I knew you existed, if that counts.
I mean, it kind of does, I guess.
I can start with that and see what your recollection later on is. But I was in the training center at work, because Petra and I were colleagues. We worked at the same sim center, even though you were based in Girona and I was based in London. You would come over every month you'd come over?
Yeah, I had the sweetest roster ever. I worked 3 weeks flying and 1 week in the simulator center.
Nice. Yeah, so you'd come over for that week. And I was with a friend of mine who another colleague of mine, and we're walking through the briefing area, and we walked past you, and I kind of just said, morning or whatever, and you said hello. And the guy next to me went, dude, that's that YouTuber. I'm like, what? Who? He went, yeah, he's a big YouTuber, Mentor something. I was like, and this was years ago, so you were probably very much growing at that point. And I was like, I've never heard of this dude. No idea who this dude is. And I looked you up. Little did I know. But yeah, and I looked you up. Oh, cool. Yeah, he's got, I think you maybe had 300,000 or 400,000 subscribers maybe at that point on Mentor Pilot. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I think maybe I'd introduce myself. But it wasn't probably until COVID, maybe was it, that we kind of networked up?
I think it was prior to COVID, actually.
Was it?
I think you reached out to me, and I'm guessing it was through Instagram.
It was. Yeah,
like that.
That's right. Because I was starting Airline Pilot Performance, and I knew nothing about social media. My knowledge of getting myself out there was minuscule. And I remember, I thought, Petter. And I was a bit naughty, actually, because there's a work WhatsApp group. And I thought, how do I reach out to you? How do I reach out to Petter? Because you must get 1 million DMs on Instagram. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to be naughty. I'll get your number off the work WhatsApp group. And I pinged you a direct message. I went, hey, man, listen, I'm Ben. I'm looking to do this. Any chance I could pick your brains? And you very kindly went, yeah, absolutely. And we set up a meeting in this room. I was in this computer here. And we just chatted. And you gave me some great advice, and which I took to heart and applied. And it's helped my channels grow. And then we end up meeting up. Then we remember during COVID, when the lockdowns finished, you were over again, I think either doing some training or whatever it was. And I took you out for dinner in a local pub, and we kind of came up with some ideas, didn't we, about doing some courses. And
I remember having a meeting in Radisson at Stansted Airport as well.
Yes, that might have been the first one, actually, where we sat down at the Radisson there, where you were over. I think you were staying there. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, and then we ended up brainstorming a few ideas. And the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I saw so much potential. I saw, and also when it comes to picking my brain is always ready for picking. I love sharing. This is probably why I'm sitting here. That there's something in me that when people around me are interested in learning and I have something to give, it's really satisfying to actually do that. And when it comes to social media. I mean, I started social media back in 2014, 2015, because I didn't know anything about it. And then I have learned a ton, and I keep learning. But in social media, it's a pretty isolated situation, because you tend to not really speak to other creators that much. So you end up gathering all of this information, but everyone is kind of reinventing the wheel next to each other. So when someone like you reach out and it's like, listen, I'm about to get into this. What would you have done if you would have started? I was like, here you go. This is what I was thinking about. And also just sharing how incredible it is. The type of real life input and influence that you can have if you come with a positive. There's a lot of people out there that shares negative messages, but if you are on the if you have the blue lightsaber and you are the ones that's sitting on not on the dark side but on the other side, you can make so much positive contribution. And in aviation, it is extremely important because it's always been a closed down box.
Yeah.
So for me to find someone like this is a dude who is an instructor, who's super nice, who's really knowledgeable and super keen to learn, that was just bonus for me. Like that was literally like having a dessert.
Yeah. Well, I was very, very grateful. And I remember, I've even some certain advice that you gave me that day. I still remember it now. And it was a bit of a shock at first because it wasn't necessarily what I thought. And when I go away and reflected on it, I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Of course you're right. And it changed the way that the direction of my social media and what I put out there. And it worked. Yep. It massively worked.
Well,
and yeah,
there are formulas to follow. There are ways to do things to reach the impact that you want as quickly as possible. And if you can avoid doing the mistakes that everyone makes, then you have a massive kind of leg up.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that slapped me around the face at first was, as nasty as this may sound, Ben, at this stage, people don't care about you. If you want to grow, you need to give people value. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, yeah, and it was true, absolutely true, and that's what I focused on.
Yeah, it's all about that, and it still is. No matter how big of a platform you get, it's about the value that you can give to the people listening. Right? Everything else is gravy. Everything else that you get from that is secondary to you delivering value. And the day that you stop doing that, the day that you stop caring about your audience and start caring only about the benefits that you get yourself, you will slowly start to become less important, to disappear, basically. Yeah. So this is what I'm thinking about in whatever thing that I do today. It's like, am I able to add value? But this podcast is a great example of that. I felt that I couldn't. There was no way for me to get myself out there, to the true, genuine voice of me. And being able to sit and have a conversation like this with a friend of mine feels like I got back to that. And I've understood that the core of the core of the core of our audience actually do appreciate that. We saw that from last episode where people loved hearing about how we became pilots.
Yeah.
And it almost brought me to tears. Again, to read the comments and realize that this is what people really want. They want authentic people telling authentic stories, and that was my reasoning, for bringing you on as well. It's like, this is a dude that can give even a further perspective on this. He will be able to add even more value to this platform. So, if he is interested, get him on board.
Awesome, and we never look back.
No, excellent. That was a little bit longer than I expected. Just like on that last episode where I basically started crying.
Yeah,
I did not expect that to happen. It was like I'm recounting something that is buried so deep inside of what is me that it just shook me. Like it was anyway.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, what did you do last week?
Well, I've just come off a busy week of flying. No sim for me this last week. It's all been flying. Some big days out there. There's a lot of disruption out there. So, and it kind of reminds you actually that the workload when you're flying and how you feel at the end of your working week when you've been doing a week of flying compared to just a week of sim. We've been in the sim a lot over the last couple of years. But now we're doing a lot more flying until we get more aircraft being delivered. We need to ramp up the training again, which is great. It's lovely to do the flying, but you certainly feel it at the end of a busy week.
It is a fatigue that's different, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just don't get me wrong, I love it, but they're long days a lot of the time. There's particularly this time of year. There's delays. There's weather avoidance. There's ATC issues, which we've seen this week. And there's one day, particularly where we were almost out of hours. In other words, we can do a certain amount of hours in a working day, where we can't legally go beyond that. And if we're down route and that's going to happen, then we have to stop, and we're probably going to overnight, which can be a real pain. It can be a real pain for not only the passengers, but a real pain for the crew, because you might be planning something the next day, and now you're down route in Greece, overnighting, and you've got to position back on the next available flight, which might not be until a day or two. And it really does kind of disrupt you. Thankfully, we swerved it. But it happened to me a while ago, actually, and it kind of leads on to our sponsor for today, which is NordVPN, where I was overnighting in Greece. And I'd planned to watch the Grand Prix the next day. And I was like, oh, man, I've been gearing up for this Grand Prix. And I was like, oh, anyway, I was in a hotel. So I thought, right, the flight's not till this evening. I'm going to go and watch it in the hotel. So I went up to the room, opened up the I had to do it on my phone, actually. I didn't have a laptop. I wasn't prepared. And couldn't access I think it was Sky or Channel 4, whichever I was trying to access. I was like, oh, no. And it was just about to start. But then I realized that I had NordVPN.
Yeah.
And I was like, let me just change my location virtually. So I changed it to the UK, to London, and now all of a sudden I had full access to Sky Sports or whatever it was, or Channel 4. And I was like, oh, awesome. So I sat there watching it, and it's great because it's available in 60 countries. It was super fast. There was no issue there. And
well, it's actually available everywhere, but they have servers in 60 countries. So they become super, super fast because just of the amount of service that they have.
Yeah. So you can put yourself virtually in 60 different countries around the world, using it anywhere. It's super fast. And if you're using the hotel Wi-Fi, it's also secure, which was a big one for me. So yeah, it got me, despite that disruption that day, I still managed to watch my Grand Prix.
Absolutely brutal ahead of what should have been his Grand Prix debut.
Which was a bonus.
Yeah, and what strikes me with NordVPN as well, since we're talking about them, and they are sponsoring this episode, is their dedication to cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Because it's becoming a real pain now. Yeah. There's loads of trackers out there that track everything that you do. There's loads of phishing attempts happening all the time, and dodgy websites everywhere. But they have loads of cybersecurities built into the feature that you don't even need the VPN for. So you don't need to activate the VPN. You just activate, for example, the Threat Protection Pro, and it will actively stop you from going into websites that they feel are dangerous or could be dealing with your data. So I am super, super happy to have them. It's activated on my phone. You have up to 10 devices on each of the deals that you set up with them. And if you who are listening to this are interested in checking them out, then you can go to either the QR code if you're seeing this on YouTube, or you can go to nordvpn.com/captain. So that's nordvpn.com/captain. Use the code PILOT, and that will give you 4 extra months when you sign up for the 2-year deal, which is great. So go to that, nordvpn.com/captain. Thanks a lot, NordVPN, for making this possible, because without the sponsors, we wouldn't be able to do this, basically. So that's great. But without further ado, let's go back to what we really wanted to talk about this episode, which has to do with rejected takeoffs and evacuations, right?
Correct. Yeah. So a couple of things that stood out in the news for me over the last week really is 2 relatively high-profile evacuations on aircraft. Now, one of them was on the 26th of July, which was an American Airlines Flight 3023, which was a 737 MAX 8 that had a rejected takeoff, trying to get airborne out of Denver going to Miami. They had a rejected takeoff because of a tire problem, a gear problem. And then there was another one a few days later on the 29th, which was a Turkish Airlines 777, Flight 2430 to Antalya. They're, again, landing gear related. This was on landing. They were taxiing in and tower reported smoke. They both resulted in evacuations. Now, that's having 2 fairly significant events in a few days, all because of the same reason. I thought was interesting. But I put a reel out actually on Airline Pilot Performance, and it was showing the footage of the American Airlines evacuation that person had taken, that I'm sure a lot of you have seen. And I put the 3 reasons why you shouldn't evacuate with your bags, because in that footage, you can see a lot of people coming out with bags. And I put a few reasons in there why. And at the end of it, I asked a question. I said, what do you think regulators and airlines can do to stop this, to prevent people doing this? And it went ballistic. I think by the end of the day, it had like 750,000 views, thousands of comments, and the comments were extremely polarizing. So I thought we can look at this in a couple of different ways. Let's look at rejected takeoffs.
Yep.
And let's talk about, there's a lot into that, and then let's talk about evacuations and why. Why is this a problem? What can we do about it? Your thoughts, my thoughts, and we'll go through there.
Absolutely, because this is one of those things that pops up on whenever I do a video about, that includes an evacuation of any sort.
Yeah.
This generally tends to be brought up, and there's loads of questions and loads of opinions on it. So I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So should we talk about rejected takeoffs? Because that's how the American Airlines event first started. That's where it all started to go wrong.
Yeah. So what is a rejected takeoff?
Yeah, so a rejected takeoff is where you're lined up on the runway, your intention is to get airborne, you begin the takeoff roll. So as a passenger, you'll hear the engine spool up, you'll begin accelerating, as I'm sure you all know. And then for a reason, the crew will decide that it's safer to reject the takeoff, to bring the aircraft to a stop, as opposed to continuing in the air. That's what a rejected takeoff is. But there's a couple of things that we need to bear in mind. A rejected takeoff is not just like stopping in a car. The aircraft, when it's doing a takeoff, is the heaviest it will be that day. And there's a huge amount of energy that needs to be dissipated, converted when we reject a takeoff. And it's not just a simple, let's just stop. There's threats involved with rejecting a takeoff of a heavy aircraft at high speed. So there's a couple of phases. There's the low speed phase and the high speed phase that we break down. What we train pilots to do, what Petter does, what I do, is we start every takeoff thinking we're going to reject. That's how I'm on the runway, ready to go. I'm thinking, but there are set criteria that we would reject for above a certain speed, which in our case would be 80 knots. I know some aircraft is 100. But below that 80 or 100 knot marker is what we call the low speed phase of the takeoff run. Above that, we call it the high speed phase. So if you're going down the runway, Petter, you're accelerating down the runway, and we get a problem in that low speed phase. Is anything why would you stop? What would be going through your mind?
Yeah. So just like you pointed out, the energy is high, but the lower the speed is, the lower the energy is.
Yeah.
And obviously it increases exponentially as the speed builds up. So below 80 knots, in the case of Boeing 737, we stop for basically anything. Right, we stop for anything that sounds wrong, any warning that pops up, anything that makes us feel the least bit uncomfortable. There are certain things that you can bring with you, but generally speaking, below 80 knots, the aircraft is not moving fast enough. And also, remember, as the aircraft accelerates and starts moving quicker and quicker, you're also eating more and more runway. And the runway is finitive, like you don't have much with it. So higher speed means less runway ahead of you to stop. But at 80 knots, you have loads of runway still. So little energy and loads of stopping distance available to you. So below that 80 knots call that happens from the pilot monitoring, you will basically stop for anything, and passengers won't notice it that much. They will definitely notice it, but even on the 737, the auto brakes are not kicked in yet, so you can do a nice smooth deceleration and then just taxi off at the next available exit and call air traffic control, depending on why you're rejecting, obviously. Yeah.
So that's the low speed, and it is, bear in mind 80 knots is what, 90, just over 90 mile an hour. That's the maximum speed at which we would consider it a low speed RTO. Once we get past that and we accelerate past that 80 knots, or some airlines I know use 100 knots. Once we accelerate past that, as Petter said, the energy in the aircraft is going up exponentially, and we've got less runway to bring it to a stop on. So now the risk involved with rejecting a takeoff can go up exponentially, and we only want to reject now if it really is the safest thing to do. And contrary to a lot of belief here, it's often much safer to take the problem into the air, depending on what the problem is, deal with it in the air, than it is to reject the takeoff for something minor when you're in that high speed regime. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But the typical things that we would reject for in that high speed regime are very serious things, such as an engine fire, or a fire, or some kind of fire, not just an engine fire, any form of fire on board the aircraft. An engine failure, of course, because we won't have the performance to accelerate from that point and get airborne potentially. Any kind of weather-related, like wind shear. So if you've got a wind shear warning active, we do not want to get airborne into that, because that can push you back down into the ground or cause bigger problems. Or if we deem that the aircraft is unable or very unsafe to fly.
Yeah, and that's the tricky one.
It is. That's the grey.
That's
area.
the tricky one. That's the part that gets captains the higher salary.
Yeah. And don't forget, we have a very, very small amount of time to make that decision, a very critical decision. Because you're bombing down the runway, and we've got that point in time, that V1, which is our decision speed, the maximum speed at which we can commence the rejected takeoff. So as we're accelerating past 100 knots, that speed is getting closer and closer and closer to us. We have a problem. We've now got to make a decision very quickly within that period of time. What is the safest thing to do? Now, if it's something like a fire bell, it will almost just be instinctive. We will just stop. But it's when you have a problem that you don't have all the information yet, but it looks nasty. Do we keep going? Do we stop? That's where you earn your money.
Yeah, and that's where, I mean, we don't know exactly what the problem was with the American Airlines flight here. They're indicating some kind of gear problem, potentially tire burst or something like that. Tire bursts are particularly nasty from a decision-making point of view, because they feel initially like an engine failure. You get sometimes a bang, you get vibrations, and because you have burst a tire, you might get the aircraft actually yawing towards the side of the bang, which is exactly what happens when you have an engine failure. You also get the bang, you can get vibrations, and you also get a yaw towards the dead engine. Yeah. So there's always a chance of misdiagnosing it. Now, the interesting bit here is that, generally speaking, if you can diagnose it as a burst tire, we're supposed to bring that into the air, because it is not life-threatening. It's not dangerous. Yes, it will affect the acceleration slightly, but it will also affect your braking capability. So if one tire is out, your braking capability is less. So in most cases, it is much better to bring that into the air. But that is, that is providing that you can actually diagnose it in that little time window that you get.
And because it goes back to that training in the sim, when you hear a bang, which is normally, when we're doing it in the sim, is normally because of an engine severe damage or a surge, our natural response is to bring the thrust back and initiate the rejected takeoff. And if it sounds very much like it, it can just be almost like an instantaneous response, unless you've got the capacity to have a quick look at the engine instruments. Yeah. If you hear a bang and you look at the engine instruments, if they're both stable, looking good, really the call should be keep going or continue, whatever your call in the airline would be, and then bring it into the air. And you might go, and I know I've had this on reels before, people go, well, why would it be safer? You're in the air. It cannot be safer to be in the air with a problem than it is on the ground. Well, by taking a relatively minor, this is all relative, a relatively minor problem into the air, there's multiple advantages for us, because now once we're in the air, the aircraft will climb away. Okay, it's got a burst tire, or we've got a system that's degraded, but the aircraft is flying safely with fuel on board and we're not on fire. And if we've got fuel on board and we're flying and we're not on fire, we have time. And if we have time, we can now make a well-informed decision as to where we go, rather than a quick snap decision. So we can gather information. And when we do come back round to land, we can land on the full length of the runway, rather than stopping on that last little bit at high speed, or even have the option to go somewhere better. If we get, go somewhere far better to go, and we can run the checklist and, get the aircrafts secured, divert or land back on a very sensible runway.
Yeah, we can burn off fuel. We could, depending on if you're flying a long haul airliner, you might be able to dump fuel as well, which brings just your energy down.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have two different. You have the short time decision making model, right? And the short time decision making model is what you have to utilize in that split second when you hear the bang, right? Then you rely on your training, your previous knowledge, your skills.
Experience,
right? So that's all you have. There's minimal situation, or the minimal ways to communicate, right? This is why the captain is the one that decides to keep going or to stop. So there's no ambiguity of who's taking the command. It's going to be the captain, and the captain is the one that theoretically has the most experience and so on. So short time decision making during that part. But once, like Ben is saying, once you brought it up airborne, now you have time available decision making, which is where you can utilize things like PIOC, which I always talk about, which is a time available decision making model where you can sit together with the rest of the crew, your first officer, even your cabin crew, air traffic control. You can bring in, define the problem really well because you have time to do so. You can bring in all of the information you need, just like Ben pointed out. You took off from Girona. Girona is relatively short. Maybe you want to go to Barcelona, which has a 3-kilometer runway instead that you can utilize. There's loads of benefits that comes with it.
Yeah, and things with a burst tire, if we're talking about that particularly, we want to be landing on the slowest possible speed, which means we need to be the lightest we can possibly be. So we could be holding, we could be dumping fuel, but equally, if the gear is up and you're happy the aircraft is safe and secure, potentially there's an option to keep going to your destination. A, that means the aircraft is where it's expected to be. B, the passengers get to where they want to be. C, you've got hours to prepare for this and let the airport know and talk through everything. Use all the resources, not just cabin crew, ATC, build that picture, but we can also use manuals. Boeing, for example, provided excellent guidance on how to land on burst tires, whether it's main gear, nose gear. You can read up on everything. You've got all of that time now to make a well-informed decision and let everybody know what's going to go on. And hopefully it'll be fine. You'll just land on, the aircraft is designed to land with flat tires. I'm sure the passengers probably wouldn't even know, but you can keep going to destination and then it's even less disruption. So there's plenty of benefits to taking the problem into the air if the aircraft can still fly safely.
Yeah, and this is also where it would be really handy to have some cameras outside, I have to say. Like if it would be great to see in this case if the gear is still hanging out, like how badly damaged is it, what tires are missing. Yeah. But again, we're still waiting for the authorities to take the decision to actually add those cameras.
Yeah, it would be great because at the moment we're resorting to speaking to air traffic control and getting runway inspections and going, what did you find? Assuming the debris is still on the runway.
Yeah, and also there is a possibility to do. Back in the day, people did low passes, right? Yeah. But what we do today is you do an approach and then you do a go around. With the gear out, and you let the air traffic control then observe the gear as you do the go around. You don't do you don't bust the tower basically. Back in the good old days, people would try to do, but again, if you had working cameras, that would be less of a requirement. I actually did a video on a super weird incident that happened in East Midlands in the UK. Where for different reasons an aircraft came in, a 737 came in and managed to touch down outside of the runway and ripped off one of its main gears.
Okay.
And it's a long video. You should really watch it. It's an amazing story, both about how not to do things, which caused the initial problem, but then how to do things after the problem had happened. And they utilized a police helicopter actually. That was flying around to zoom in and film the gear to show that in fact there is no gear, right? the gear is ripped off.
Wow.
But yeah, it's anyway. Once you have decided, once you have all of the information available, then you can make a good, safe decision.
Yeah. So if that's kind of the decision making process behind rejected takeoffs. Do we keep going? Do we reject below low speed, high speed? These are the various regimes, and we train for this. And it's a really interesting topic to do in the sim, where you have the crew know that there's going to be scenarios, but they don't know whether it's going to be a scenario that warrants us keeping going, it's the best option, or whether it's a scenario that warrants a rejected takeoff. And we just do them, and we reset onto the runway and go, right, go. Every takeoff starts normally, and then it puts them in these scenarios where they have to make these quick decisions. And it's one of those scenarios where every time the crew come out of that, they go, that was good, that was useful, that really helped. Yeah. Because it's exposing you to these kind of scenarios and putting you in that position. And it's great. And if they do make a bit of a mistake, they get cross with themselves, and you can guarantee that they won't do that mistake again, which is the purpose of training, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I love doing, those kind of loft scenarios, which is what's called line-oriented
flight training. Yeah.
That's it. Which is just bringing real scenarios. They don't need to be that diabolical. They just need to be. Often there was just one. I remember just putting in one simple thing, but those things tend to when you let the scenario continue,
Yeah.
they create all of these like side paths of how, depending on what the crew decides to do, you're going to have different outcomes. And rather than doing the kind of training that we tended to do back in the day, which was like, okay, now we're in an engine failure, they sorted that, stop, go back, let's go for the next one. Here, you let it flow through. Like you let it come to its conclusion, which is where people really can start, tying knots out of themselves. And that brings us nicely into what happens if we decide to reject. Let's say that there is a fire indication. Right, there's a fire indication and it continues. So we do the rejected takeoff. It's very what to do is very defined between the captain or the pilot flying and the pilot monitoring, or the captain and the first officer. So if we reject the takeoff, it's all about doing the things in the right order. We don't have to go into that. But it is super important initially, once the decision is taken, that the aircraft stops in the shortest distance available.
Yeah.
And if the auto brake kicks in, the RTO setting, the rejected takeoff setting on the auto brake is really violent.
Yeah.
Like you will notice it. If you're in a high-speed rejected takeoff, you will sit with your face planted into the seat in front of you. Like it is the most severe braking that you've ever experienced. But that's what the aircraft is designed to do.
Yeah. It's impressive that it can bring an aircraft with that weight at that energy level and stop it so rapidly. I mean, we both use Auto Brake Max, which is the maximum automatic braking system that the aircraft can do, which we use on short runways. I actually used it last week going into Santorini, which is a short, narrow runway. And you know what it's like. You touch down. There's about a second or so as the wheels spin up and it's sensing everything. And then they just go, they just bite. And you stop on a sixpence. So yeah, it's super impressive. And we once we've done our actions, once we've brought the aircraft to a stop, we set the parking brake, and that's where now everything needs to start happening in slow motion. Yep. We need to start being super methodical, because naturally it's all happening quick, and your brain will be going quick, and it's easy to make mistakes. And you and I have seen this countless times with training cadets. And the way you prevent that is to slow everything right down. From the way that you're speaking to the way that you're reading checklists, it just slows your brain down. So yeah, we set a parking brake. In the 737, we have overwing exits, but we don't have slides. So we use the wing flaps, the trailing edge flaps of the wing that extend out and down. We put them into their most extended position, which is flap 40 for us. So they act like slides for passengers on the overwing, so they can slide down them. So the first officer will select flap 40, they will inform the tower, and now we go into our diagnostic stage where we will state the malfunction, we'll identify it.
Yeah, but it's super important to point out here, right, that an evacuation is not a guarantee.
Exactly.
Absolutely not. Even though we set the flaps to 40 as part of the rejected takeoff maneuver to facilitate a potential evacuation, it is far from a given that it's actually going to lead to an evacuation.
Correct. Yeah, correct. And I think there is, crews often, because they are selecting that, there's that mindset that we're definitely going out here, we're going to be evacuating. And it's something that we have to train, isn't it, during command upgrade training, where that decision needs to be made. So even though we're preparing the aircraft, because it takes quite a bit of time, particularly if an engine is shut down, to run those flaps all the way out to 40. And we don't want to be delaying an evacuation because those flaps are not there. So we just get them out so that they're ready if we decide to. And we'll state the malfunction, we'll diagnose what the fault is. If there's checklist or memory items to secure that problem, we will do it, such as trying to put a fire out in an engine. And once we've run through those checklists, we then need to make a decision. Do we evacuate, or do we stay on board? And it's not as straightforward as it seems, because the natural response will be, surely it's just better to be out. If there's any doubt, there's no doubt, get out. And there's a logic to that. But the thing to bear in mind here that we have to be mindful of is that evacuations in themselves can be dangerous.
Yep.
People get hurt. And the way I teach command upgrade, you say, imagine your 70 or 80-year-old grandmother who's going on holiday, who struggles to get into their seat. Imagine them getting thrown down a slide, 10, 15 feet down to the bottom of a slide. It's going to end in broken bones. It's going to cause problems. You've got children. You've got all sorts of people there that could potentially get hurt. You're also evacuating onto a runway. it might be poor visibility, it might be nighttime, it might be raining, and you've got fire trucks now being dispatched out, screaming into this zone, and people walking around away from the aircraft. People have been hit, haven't they? I think there was which one was it? In San Francisco.
In San Francisco, yeah.
Yeah.
When they got low on final and hit the pier.
Yeah, that's right.
That wasn't due to the evacuation. That was because I think the person was actually flung out.
Was it? Okay.
Onto and it was covered with foam and couldn't be seen. But yeah, I mean the point still stands that I am an ex-firefighter, right?
Yeah.
And when we get the alarm, when someone hits the alarm bell saying that okay, we have an accident or we have an evacuation happening at the end of runway 12, we will just floor it because we need to get there within 90 seconds from the alarm. So that's us potentially going from sleeping, which I've actually done myself, going from sleeping into our firefighting gear, into the cars and away, and reaching that end of any of the runways available in 90 seconds. So if you have people confused in the fog running around, running towards us, for example, it is a potential danger. So there's no question that evacuations will cause injuries.
Yeah.
Right. They always do.
Yeah.
And that is partially also because of the nature of the evacuation itself and the way that our excellent cabin crew are trained to handle an evacuation. Which brings us kind of neatly into the next point. And that is like, okay, so once we've taken the decision to evacuate, we have our checklist to follow. And that checklist will make sure that it's safe to evacuate, right? So we will shut down the engines, for example. We'll pull the fire switches. We will make sure that there's nothing outside now, that once we do say, the evacuation command, which differs a little bit between different airlines, it's safe to get out there, relatively speaking.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's the, Peder's kind of hit all the points there, because when we're just going back to that evacuation decision, it needs to be safer to put people into harm's way, in that sense, to chuck people out of an aeroplane down plastic slides into active runways where there's fire crews coming. It has to be safer to do that than it is to keep them on board.
Yeah,
that's kind of the mindset that we're in. And if we then decide, but let's say there is smoke, there's fire, the decision there is relatively straightforward. If there's fire on board an aircraft, it's far better to get off the airplane quickly.
Yeah.
So we initiate that evacuation. As soon as we say that word evacuation, there's no going back. So we've got to be sure. Even if we change our mind, we're kind of committed at that point.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. And that brings us to cabin crew, right?
Yes.
Because everyone out there, well, not everyone, but people out there maybe have a false impression of what the cabin crew does. But this is really what they're trained for.
Yeah.
Right? The evacuation and keeping the passengers as safe as possible is their primary objective. That's why they're there. Without them, if that was not needed, you would not see cabin crew on board. It's as easy as that. People could go on and get their coffee from the forward galley themselves. Right? They are there for safety. And when they hear the command evacuate, or under a few circumstances where they can actually initiate the evacuation themselves, which is an obviously unnatural position of the aircraft, so the aircraft is upside down or it's tilting heavily or whatever, if you are ditched into the water or there is smoke and fire.
Yeah.
I think it's those three, yeah?
Yeah. Or there's no response to the flight crew, from the flight crew. They can't reach us.
They can't reach us. Then they have the authority to initiate evacuation. Yeah. So under those circumstances, you might see that happening. In most cases, they are waiting for us because they also know that we are doing stuff inside to evaluate whether it's needed, but also to make sure that everything is safe. Because the last thing you want to do is open an overwing exit and throw someone out into a running engine.
No.
Right. So they tend to wait. But once the decision is made and they hear the command, they will go into action that you've never seen before. And they will scream and they will pull and they will push, right? Yeah. They will open the doors. They have if they've had time available, they've assigned people who will help them in case they can't to open the doors. Able-bodied people. This is, by the way, why you can't be a minor sitting in the first row or wing exits, because you might actually have to help. But once the evacuation starts, you should see that. Like everyone should see an example of what an evacuation looks like from a competent cabin crew.
Yeah. It would change people's perspective, isn't it? Because it really triggers me when people kind of look at cabin crew as glorified waitresses or something like that, or waiters. Yeah, they will be the person that makes the difference potentially of you getting out alive or not.
Yeah.
And you don't see what they do. You don't see the training. It's a shame there's not more of a spotlight on it.
Yeah. Which we will do now.
We will.
This is one of the reasons why I said we need to add value. This is value.
Yeah.
Because they are trained they have assigned exits. Right, so each cabin crew has assigned exits. Tend to be 4 in a 737. You have 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and the overwing exits are supposed to be handled by the passengers. That's why you're now getting briefings for how to do so when you sit at those exits. But they will obviously take a decision. So they hear that an evacuation is needed, but they will not open the door until they have made sure that it's safe outside, because it might be a fire outside.
Yeah.
So they will start their job by making sure that the exit is clear, that we can use it. They will then open the exit. In the case of the 737, once you open the door and the girth bars and the slides are attached properly, that will immediately fold out the evacuation slides. Once the door is open, the slide is there, they will start screaming at people. Come here, go out, jump, 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 jump. And they will push people if they don't.
Yeah.
Right, they will make sure that people are not hesitant, because, jumping out at 737 is one thing, but they do this on 747s and Airbus A380s, right, which is like a 4-story building high. And generally speaking, if it was me who had to jump out, I would take my sweet time. I would look at it and maybe maybe there's a better way to do this, but you don't have time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look. No, there's no time here, right? There's no time for decisions for the passengers. Becomes luggage that needs to be delivered outside of the, this is what it is. You and everyone around you needs to be saved, and that can only be done by you exiting as quickly as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And there are restrictions or there are certification requirements around this, isn't it?
Yeah, every aircraft has to be certified and proven that a full aircraft in its maximum capacity can be fully evacuated in under 90 seconds with only half of the exits open.
Yeah. And proven means that this has been checked. Like they pack people full of volunteers
untrained
on a training ground, untrained, without any idea of how to do this. They push them into an aircraft, they sit them in their seats with their seatbelts on, and then they start the test with trained cabin crew. And those tests, unless it can be shown that this can be done under 90 seconds with only half of randomly selected doors, should be said. So the cabin crew has no idea which of the doors will be blocked and which won't. If that cannot be done, if it's not done within 90 seconds, the aircraft is not certified to fly.
No. And there's some great videos of this being done. And if we can show it, and if you go and have a look at it, what you'll notice is that everybody's sitting there, and it's kind of dark in there as well. So that's the other element you've got to consider. It's really the worst case scenario, is that everyone's kind of primed. They get the same safety demo that you would get when you go on holiday. That's kind of the information that they've got. But as soon as the alarm goes to evacuate, everybody is seatbelts off and they are sprinting to the exit, to the nearest exit. Whether it could be behind you, as cabin crew will always say. So always be aware of where that exit might be or where a couple of them are. And they sprint, and then it's push, 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 jump, go. And cabin crew are literally grabbing people and chucking them out. Because if every person hesitates a couple of seconds and you've got 200 people on there, that 90 seconds is gone just in hesitation.
Yep, absolutely. And this is also why, like, I tend to tell people ask me, like, what do you do differently when you fly an aircraft, right? What do you sit there and pretend that you're the pilot, whatever? No, but one of the things that I do is I actually do read the charts, like the little emergency exit charts.
Yeah.
I actually, no matter if I know the aircraft or not, I take it up and I read it and I look around me and I think, okay, so I have 5 rows back to the emergency exit, or I have 4 rows forward to go. And I just like make a little mental note of that, because that's the difference. That could be the difference in a smoke-filled environment, for example, to find your way out as quickly as possible together with your family. So I do listen to the safety briefing, and I use the time to give myself a mental briefing, because I know that might be the difference. But this then brings us to, obviously, what your reel was about, which was about people taking their luggage when they do an evacuation in real life.
Yeah.
Now, do we understand this? Yes. I understand it. It's a human reaction. It's
I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In fact, it's a very human reaction.
Yeah.
This is why, for example, people have a tendency to try to go for the 1L exit, because that's where people came in from. We as humans are programmed to just, if we are under stress, we will just try to reverse what we just did.
Yeah.
We came in from a door, we want to go out the same door. So and you had your luggage and you put your luggage up, so now naturally you want to take your luggage and you want to go out. In a stress situation, I understand it. But once again, this is a reason to listen to the briefing, because you cannot.
No,
Not.
it just doesn't work, and I completely get it. I remember I was actually jump seating. Where was I? I was coming back from? No, I was actually flying back as a passenger from when I visited you not long ago, and I had my laptop with me and in the in the overhead bin, and I remember thinking about this actual topic while we were boarding. And to me, my laptop's got everything on it. If I lost that, it'd be a nightmare. Yeah, there's cloud backup and so on. So I get there is that desire to take it with you, of course. But the way that I look at it is it's a matter of priorities. Of course, we would want to take our brand new camera with us, or our laptop, or whatever, or just our clothes, whatever it might be. Of course you do. But you've got to be mindful of the consequences of doing that and prioritizing it.
And I think this is where it's really important to have these kind of podcasts and to make videos about these things, because I don't think that people actually realize. They don't realize the time, the time that they have, the 90 seconds, and why the 90 seconds are there. I do, because I have seen fire.
Yeah.
I have been an airport firefighter. Part of that was just training and sitting inside of a simulated cabin, which started to burn. And I've seen what fire does. And the flashover, the capability for a fire flashover to happen when you get the right mixture of oxygen, fuel, and heat, and it explodes.
Yeah.
That the 90 seconds comes from that, right? It's from a small fire source which has unlimited access to fuel, and then reaching a flashover point. That is, I don't think people understand what kind of fire we're talking about, because people have an idea in their head. When they think of fire, they think of a campfire. They think of a log burning, or a curtain burning, or something like that, with something that the fire is attached to, and it burns there, and it's a little bit, there's a distance to it. A flashover, it's everything burns. The oxygen, the very air that you breathe burns. Right. And I have seen it. It's beautiful. But we were in full firefighting gear when the flashover happened in that container. We had to get out of there because our visors started to melt. Right. That means 500 degrees or something like that. Incineration temperatures. So that's where the 90 seconds comes from. And your bag that you have with you, no matter how much you want to take it with you, it's not worth more than the kids of someone further back in the cabin.
No, and it's an incredibly good point, because you might get out, you might go get your bag, and I can jump out, but you've held up. That's taken you. We all know how long it takes to get bags out of overhead bins. We watch it every time we go flying, and it takes time to get that out. That 10, 15 seconds that it took you means potentially 5 or 10 passengers behind you don't get out, or behind them don't get out. And what was interesting that I found when I watched, there was a video footage. I don't know if it was inside the same aircraft. I couldn't verify it. But it was in the back of a 737. I think it was the same one. I'm not sure. But there were passengers scream. Some of them really wanted to get out because they understandably needed to get out after the evacuation command. But some were just really taking their time as though they're disembarking. And they were screaming. And the guy, the guy that was trying to defend himself was very much saying, well, no, they've got it under control. The firefighters are here now. The service are here. We've got loads of time. Don't stress. Just chill out. He's telling this person to chill out. And what that kind of reminded me of is what you've just spoken about, is that just because where you're sitting in row 30, it looks okay, doesn't mean that it is okay, because the captain, for them to command that decision, remember, they've made that decision based on the fact that it's safer to jump out of this aircraft than it is to stay on board. And they're privy to information that you probably won't know. And there was a superjet, wasn't there? Was it in Russia where?
Yeah, it's superjet that happened on the 5th of May 2019. There was an accident where they landed very hard. They bumped a couple of times and burst into fire.
Yeah, it was an awful, awful accident. But and it kind of drums home this point, is that the very front of the aircraft was fine. anyone sitting in row one looked out the window and everything, apart from the actual what they've just experienced outside, would have been fine. They wouldn't have seen any smoke because the smoke was getting blown away. Everything kind of seemed okay. But what they didn't realize is at the very back of the aircraft, it's an inferno. And the only way they're going to get out is by coming forward. Now, if everybody's standing up in the middle half forward getting their bags, they've got nowhere to go. And tragedy happens.
Yeah, which is exactly what happened. Right?
Yeah.
People were jumping out with the bags in that accident, and people died. So no, like you cannot, should not, will not bring any kind of luggage with you when you jump when there's an evacuation command. Now, I understand also that there are questions that comes up here, like what happens to my luggage?
Yeah.
What? Okay, if I leave everything behind, what happens to it? And the unfortunate answer for me personally, I'm hoping maybe that there's someone out there in the audience that can explain this further, is that we don't really know. The only thing that we do know is that if the aircraft is okay, you will get your stuff back.
Yeah.
It might take a little time, but it'll come back. If you are insured, you'll get the money for it.
Yeah.
For sure. But everyone is going to do their absolute utmost for you to get your stuff back. But it's not a priority at that second when it happens.
No. No. And, there's various ways that may happen. But one of the, and as I said in that reel, the comments, they're very polarizing. Some people in there were saying, people that take their bags should be arrested at the scene. Other people are saying, well, no, I've got my camera, laptop, whatever, what you want to have up there. There's no way I'm leaving without it, and everything in between. But people have some very valid points. Well, saying, look, I'm diabetic and my drugs or medicine or injections, they're all in my bag. If I don't take that, then it's serious for me. And that's a very valid point. But there are potentially ways around that as well. Have you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I would, if I have something like that, I would probably consider having one of those fanny packs, those things that you attach to your body and just have the insulin, at least one of the capsules or whatever on your body, because that's not hand luggage. So that's something that you will not take any time. If you have to evacuate, you just have it with you. It's hanging on you and you evacuate with it. I would probably, I don't do it myself, but you could consider to have, for example, your passport in one of those as well. Yeah. But definitely, if you're someone who has life-threatening illness that requires medicine, you should definitely have this in the back of your mind, even though it's likely that there's going to be medical personnel outside that can help you anyway, right?
Yeah.
So it's very unlikely that you won't be able to get insulin pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That's a consideration to make. Me personally, I have all of my travel documentation. I have copies of my passport, my ID on my phone, and I have Apple Pay. There's Google Pay as well, so I can have credit cards, which means I can pay for things. And so I know that if I have my phone in my pocket and I jump up with that, I will be able to at least identify myself until I can get help from the embassy or wherever where you end up. So those are the kind of things that I would personally think about. I'm sure there's going to be people that have other suggestions. But one thing that I want to run by you, Ben, which I've gotten loads and loads of suggestions about, like, so if this is so important, why don't we lock the overhead bins during takeoff and landing? What's the possible downside of locking those things? You could tell people with diabetes, for example, to keep their stuff with you.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? What's your response?
Yeah, it's probably the most commented reply in my feed. Lock the hat bins, and it's a good, on paper, I think it's a good solution. I mean, it would potentially prevent this. There was a couple of counter arguments to it we'll talk about, but it would be, there's going to be certification involved. There's going to be extra weight. There's going to be mechanisms and complications. But it would be, on paper, something relatively simple to introduce. For example, the overwind exits on the 737, they're typically unlocked on the ground and they auto-lock via like a solenoid when we add thrust for takeoff and doors are closed. There's a kind of logic to it. But it'd be very simple to kind of lock it into that. So as soon as we begin the takeoff run, or as soon as we maybe start engines, it auto-locks. And we would, you have to brief the passengers that, make sure you got everything out until it won't be unlocked until the seatbelt sign goes off, etc. Maybe it could be linked to the seatbelt sign. Who knows? But and I think, I think that would potentially try it. One of the counter arguments in the comments that I saw, which I hadn't thought of, was that people, even if they know it's locked, they will panic and they will still try and force it open, which is going to, again, still block the aisle. You're never going to, I don't think you're ever going to be able to stop that element to it. But have you, from your research or, doing videos on this, is any downside to locking this that you've come across, to locking the hat bins?
No.
Nothing
that would counterweigh the benefit of having them locked when it's time for an evacuation.
No.
There are definitely, you could see these things failing. You can see all of those kind of things, but it's always safety foremost here. So to have these things auto-locking during the takeoff roll until the belts comes off, and the same for landing, I mean, it might even get away with the problem of people standing up during taxi to try to get their stuff down. Right? If they knew that they couldn't reach it because it's locked, maybe people will stay seated. So I know I don't see any real problem with it. I see technical issues, I see certification issues, and no airline will add anything unless the governing body, EASA, FAA, and so on, tells them to. But no, I don't see any, there's no obvious downside to this that I can see. And obviously, before something like this would be implemented, you'd go through loads of evaluations of have we thought of everything? But yeah, it's similar to what we talked about a couple of episodes back when we talked about the start switches in the cockpit being connected to the thrust lever position, so that if the thrust levers are in the forward position, you cannot switch off the start levers to switch off the engines. It's also very little. I haven't been able to find any decent reason why that wouldn't be a great idea.
No. And you're saying that even, I think Embraer already employ that. They already have it on their aircraft. So unless the thrust lever is all the way at idle, you cannot move the start lever or start switch, fuel switch to cut off.
Yeah, so the way I've understood, I'm not rated on it, but the way I've understood it is that they do have that, which means that it's already certified.
Yep.
So it's a great thing.
It does seem. I mean, it's one of those things I'd not thought of. It wasn't until I think we're on the live stream or one of the episode or with comments and someone suggested it. I was like, yeah, makes perfect sense.
Yep. No, it's great. So if you guys have any more inputs on this, I hope this has kind of clarified what an evacuation is. Well, first of all, rejected takeoff, evacuation, why it's important to never, ever bring your hand luggage with you in case of an evacuation. But if you have more questions or suggestions or whatever, then pile it into the comments here below. We love reading those comments. And in fact, before we go, we have some questions that have come on previous episodes.
Awesome.
That we can discuss. So Jake, our brilliant channel manager, has been kind enough to put this together for us. So we haven't read them before. Let's see. Joe is asking, does the NTSB or any other major civilian organization investigate military aircraft crashes?
I'm going to defer that to you. I don't know.
No. I think it depends. Is the answer. It depends on whether or not the civilian organizations are allowed in, and if they're asked. So, for example, I've done accidents. I've done a video on a military accident that happened to a military cargo aircraft that was taking personnel down to one of the bases in Afghanistan. And in that case, I think it was the UK CAA who did that investigation. But if it's involving smaller military jets, I don't think so. I think that's then involving only the military's internal ones. So it's a little bit of maybe is the answer. Right. So this is a good one. Rich is asking, can you explain the hierarchy structure of cabin crew you fly with and what is involved in them being type rated, as I am led to believe they also need licenses, etc.?
That's a good question.
That's an excellent question. It goes back to the whole thing that the cabin crew are really trained on what they do.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point, Peter, isn't it? Because Sandra, she got a cabin crew qualification distinct from any aircraft type.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. Different countries, prior to EASA being, the European body to handle everything, there was slightly different national requirements. So my wife Sandra, she's Spanish, and in Spain at the time, you needed to do cabin crew training. before you got into a specific airline, you did kind of a certification to become a cabin crew. And that involved, from what I've understood from listening to her and talking to her, basically PPL standard theory. So she went through things like aircraft general. She knew about how jet engines works, how piston engine works. She knew about structural things in the aircraft. She knew about basically all of the general systems, not down to the level that you would have to do in order to become a commercial pilot, but on a pretty high level, she understands that, and that includes meteorology and navigation, interestingly enough, and avionics and all of those things. So basically, all of the PPL, private pilot license subjects. Plus, they had to do training in, obviously in the pool to what to do in case of an evacuation outside of an aircraft, so after a ditching. All of these things. So it took, I think, 6 months to a year to do that training for her.
Yeah.
But generally now, the cabin crew training is decided. The airlines will do the training, and it will be certified via the governing bodies, so FAA, EASA, and so on. They need to do tests, theoretical tests, practical tests, and so on. Once they're certified, they do get a kind of like a type training certificate, I think. So they do have a certificate that they have to check. It's valid for a certain period. It needs to be revalidated, as far as I understand. And they also have medical requirements similar to what we do. Once you are certified and you have been hired, you've gone through the training, then you will be trained on this particular type, like I said, and you will start off as what we call a junior cabin crew. So that's someone that's brand new. Generally speaking, the newest cabin crew, there cannot be too many of them on board a certain flight. So I think it's two. Yeah. And then you work for a certain amount of months until you have experience to kind of take one step up. And at least in our airline, they're numbered. So you have cabin crew number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they all have different assignments. So they all need to do certain drills, and they all have different doors, for example. And the only one that really needs a step up in terms of training is the purser, the number 1. And the purser is then going to get further training because they become the cabin chief, and they are the ones that are the leaders in terms of the hierarchy in the aircraft, the command chain. You have the captain, the first officer, the purser, and then cabin crew designated underneath in order that they have experience, generally speaking.
Yeah. And they do recurrent training, a bit like we do in some respects every year. So they have to be, and there's an element of that's combined with pilots. So I did it fairly recently where you do a day together with the cabin crew, which is super valuable.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think you should do way more.
Yeah, it's great because we get to sort of talk freely, get split up into groups. We're given case studies and scenarios, and it's great to kind of see different perspectives and what challenges they've got, what challenges we've got. Practice giving like NITS briefings, and they're doing all their first aid training, all the equipment training on all the different types of fire extinguishers and breathing equipment. So there's a lot of recurrent training, which is why it kind of grinds on me when people say, "Oh, they're glorified waitresses."
I remember when I started off. I don't know how they do it now. I think it's similar that before each flight, before each day, the purser will do kind of like an exam with the juniors, where the purser will ask questions. Okay, so we have a no time available emergency coming up here. What you are going to be number 3? What's going to be your drill? And they have to then recite verbatim from the manual. This is what I have to do at these points to really show that they're up to the job. So this is not easy. No. It's not like you do the training and now you're a cabin crew and now you can relax. No, you need to be on the ball every single day. And if you don't, then the person might decide that actually this person doesn't know their drills, so they're not going to fly today. And that's it.
Serious.
It's serious stuff.
Yeah, it's high standards and they need to be maintained.
Yep, exactly. And they're proud, and they should be proud of what they do. Like I am, I love working with really knowledgeable cabin crew because they can make the day become much shorter. They're great at handling people. They have to deal with all sorts of people. Lately, there's been a lot of disruptive passengers, for example, during the summer flying down from the UK down to Ibiza, for example, whatever, there's always these like stag parties and crazy shit going on. But they managed to deal with it while always thinking that the safety is what I'm really here for.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're our eyes and ears in the cabin. We're at the very pointy end of this thing. The other 99% of it's behind us, and we rely on them.
Yeah.
They're the eyes and ears of the aircraft.
Imagine ambulance personnel that has to serve coffee inside of the waiting room of the hospital. That's what you have. You have like certified ambulance personnel that also gives you coffee at times.
Yeah. And thankfully, because their training is so rarely needed in the sense from the emergency perspective, thankfully, it's natural people only ever see them serve coffee and tea, which is why that's why people feel that. But you've got to give them that respect that they're there to save your life, and they have saved lives multiple times, countless times in the past.
Oh, yeah, and their heart stops on a weekly basis. On any airline, you'd have these medical emergencies, and they are on the forefront to dealing with that.
Yeah.
So
there was an aircraft ahead of us that literally 2 days ago coming into Stansted, we had to put in the hold because there's an aircraft coming in because someone had a cardiac arrest, and you just know that cabin crew are working relentlessly on that passenger until paramedics get on board.
Yeah. So next time you see a cabin crew, think hero that serves me coffee.
Yeah.
That's it. Right. George is asking, where do long haul pilots sleep, or how do they stay awake all the way from New York to London, for example? New York to London is 6-7 hours.
Yeah.
So that's not the worst one, but I do understand what you mean.
Yeah.
When you fly long haul, either the route is short enough so that you actually don't need any extra crew. Like, for example, London to New York is actually shorter than a typical day on short haul airlines in Europe. Like, I've flown up to 12 hours without getting to sleep.
Yeah.
But if it's longer than that, then long haul airlines either tend to have crew bunks, which are dedicated little sleeping quarters that is either down in the belly of the aircraft or up in the roof, generally, or they get access to the first class or business class areas, which tend to have flatbeds, so dedicated to that. Yeah. So you need to be able to sleep if you need an augmented crew, which is called.
Yeah. And there's very strict times. I think, for example, if there's a 3 crew, which will be like classed as a heavy crew. So if you've got 2 pilots plus a heavy, which will be the relief pilot, once you get in the crews, the heavy pilot will go back in the bunk, get 3 or 4 hours rest. Once they've had their designated rest, they'll come back into the flight deck. FO will go out, have their 3 or 4 hours, and then he'll come back or she'll come back. A captain goes out 3 or 4 hours, and then they'll land at destination. So it's very kind of regulated, very precise. I think the difficult bit is when you're down route. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to go on a few trips with friends who now fly long haul, and it's, especially if you're going west, you might wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning. That's 10, 11 o'clock in the morning your time. But you now got to sit there at 3 or 4 in the morning. Nothing's open, and you've got to whittle away the time, and then it gets to like 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and you're knackered because now it's 1 o'clock in the evening. Your body climb, and it's hard.
It's hard. It's flying long haul. I think you have to be really, like, you have to have some kind of technique to do it that adapts to your way of being. Some people don't get jet lag. I do, so I would have to to try to stay on my hometown time or something like that. But it is complicated.
That's a challenge.
We're almost up to 1 hour and 15 minutes now, which is some kind of new record.
Yeah, I think so.
So thanks a lot for those questions. We will continue to read them and answer them, and we'll also see if there's any tendencies in the comments that comes in and attack them differently. But I think on that bombshell, we will kind of sign off for today. Do you have anything to add?
No, not at all. Thanks. It's a great hour and 15 minutes. It's been a lot of fun. So let us know in the comments if, particularly with the bags, what's your thought? What's the solution to this? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next week.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.